Dun, 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 dun. And then we just start the same way every time. Episode numero dos.
Número dos, uno, dos. How many
I
languages
don't know why my voice went super low when I said that too.
Welcome to Chatter That Matters with Lea Morrison and Crystal Jensen.
As you hear the cheering.
And the crowd goes wild. Welcome, everybody, to episode number 2, if you didn't catch that before.
And we're just going to start every episode with randomly doing nothing. Okay, so I know there's something that I wanted to talk about today, and then you had mentioned something this morning through text that you wanted to talk about. So who wants to go first? Rock, paper, scissors?
It's dynamite. It's been so long.
Dynamite?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, you go.
All right, you go first.
Oh.
What did I want to talk to you about? Oh, random generators of ideas.
Okay, what is that, first of all?
Super excited. Well, this is what I'm thinking, because we have some ideas of what we want to talk about, but I'm sure our listeners have some ideas too. So I was like, ooh, what if we offered up suggestion box, and we can stick it in a box and we can randomly generate ideas. So we might have something that we want to talk about, but we've got an extra 10, 15 minutes, and the random generator, boink, look at my hair, ding.
And then we just pop out a topic and you and I just chit chat on it. Okay.
Because I'm sure there's some people that might want to hear something, and you know, we can incorporate it in. So we're open to suggestions. Are you open to that random generator idea box?
I think it's a good idea, actually.
I like it. And then it kind of allows our audience, those listeners, to take part in the conversation.
I like it. And then maybe we can bring one of them in if they really want to talk about some stuff. That would be cool.
Right?
Like a third little party coming into play.
That was my inspired action this morning as I was putting on my mascara. I was like, ooh, remind me.
I like it.
So I know you wanted to talk about something juicy about syngeries.
I did. Well, and it's because I had a session yesterday. Okay, so not a session, a meeting with a client yesterday. So how do we even start this off? We know about synchronicities and like the synchronicities of numbers and license plates, and when you see the numbers flashing around and how it's like a signal from the universe. But what's been happening for me in the last, couple of years is things from my past, people from my past that I didn't know even existed, where we were in the same room together at the same time at this certain time and place. And then now they're like major players in my life. And the way that it is brought about that they are in my life is very synergistic. So I can say that about my ex-husband. I can say that about my current boyfriend right now. I could say that about 2 of my very dear friends. And then a client who's with me today because of, and we just discovered last night, we were in the same room at the same time when our children were born. So, and now I'm treating her daughter. And it's really quite fascinating. So I wanted to share a few of the stories to see if you can, relate in your life. I mean, how we came together is pretty cool. But how you can start to understand that life is working for you, even though it's not like an immediate thing. So let's chat. Well, my ex-husband and I, his sister and my friend that I grew up with, her sister, were best friends. So we'd heard about each other forever, and I'd known his sister since she was 12 years old, but we didn't meet for another 10 years after that. And when we met, I remembered, actually, I had a flash of a memory come at me where he used to go to a tanning salon that one of my other friends worked at. And I remember him walking through and checking him out when I was like in my early 20s, and my girlfriend's like, no, he's like 3 years younger than you. Don't even think about it. I was like, ugh. And I ended up marrying the guy, meeting him a couple years later. And the sweater that he was wearing when I saw him that day, and I remembered him, it was clearly burned into my memory. He was wearing that same sweater that night that we connected for the first time. And so that was really kind of interesting. And then found out we were both born in the same hospital by the same doctor, just 3 years apart. So that kind of synergistic, right? Yeah. Then my partner now, we ended up going to school together, and we connected throughout the years, like just running into each other. But when we were sitting there in summer, this past summer, talking about our favorite family memories, found out that we actually frequented the same campsite place down in the States. every summer with our grandparents, and we were actually only 5 camping spots away for over a span of 5 years. So we absolutely had to have played together, or our grandparents knew each other and we had no idea. And then we ended up in the same school where I randomly went last minute because my mom got remarried. So I moved in with my dad, and he transferred in last minute to that school, and we became part of the same high school crowd. So it's really interesting. And now we're together, and I still like say his name going, that guy from high school, that's who I'm, huh? Right. And he does the same thing. It's really interesting. And then this story today that I wanted to share. So anybody who's been following me knows that I struggled with conversion disorder, which is a serious mental illness, trauma-induced mental illness, where I had functional neurological disorder as well as psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. So what basically that meant is that I categorically converted my emotional trauma into physical symptoms. It's a really serious mental illness that can be treated, but also initiates more trauma because you are not believed, and because there's nothing organically wrong to cause these symptoms. It is all psychogenic, but doesn't make it any less real or any less painful. So I struggled with that for quite a few years. It was about 2 or 3 years in total before I started getting off of all of this. But it started through postpartum depression and the premature birth of my son. Now, I was in the NICU and met a few moms that I still keep in touch with to this day, and our children are turning 13 next month. And she had referred her friend's daughter to me, who is struggling with conversion disorder. And I have permission to speak of this. And it's interesting because as we sat and chatted yesterday, and I've been treating her daughter now, who has conversion disorder, for almost 3 months. She's been seizure free for about a month and a half, which is very exciting. It's amazing to watch her progress. I couldn't be more proud of how dedicated she is at the age of 14 years old. Realized that she was with my friend in the NICU holding her baby, and our incubators were like feet apart. So we sat there.
Goosebumps.
13 years ago next month, we sat feet apart, and now I'm treating her daughter, and all through that connection. And it's such a beautiful, I feel like they're family, even though they're not, because of this beautiful connection of synergy. And if I had to go through what I went through to treat the people that I'm treating now for that experiential trauma, and maybe that's why this person, the woman who had a premature baby born at the same time. I mean, they lived on the island and they got flown into New Westminster of all like why that hospital at that time. Maybe that was because of everything I was about to go through, and now I can help her dear friend's daughter. And I think it's a really beautiful connection when you can take the trauma or your life and go, this is, even though it sucks, it's working for me, right? And you take that victimization out of what happens to you, what is happening for me, and it gives you a little bit of power back, right?
Totally.
Even our story.
I love that. Yeah, I can share our story.
Yes, please share our story.
So I don't know how long, so let's rewind. My auntie, Tina, is a dear friend and auntie of mine. She basically raised me as a young child. And Lea was a student of, Auntie Tina's. And I don't know how long.
She's my mentor.
She's her mentor. So
incredible human beings. Yeah.
If you're watching, hi, Tina.
Hi, Tina.
We'll have to tag her in this. Shout out. So very interesting because, Lea is working with Tina as her mentor, and I show up at this spiritual wellness fair, and I said, hey, Auntie, I'm looking to get a clearing and a rebalancing. And this was in, when was that? 2016? I actually have the recording on my phone that we listened to the other day. Do you remember that on my couch? We actually listened to the audio recording of everything that you were telling me.
How fast I spoke.
Well, and some of the stuff I'm still working through. Oh yeah, that's right. I got to go back. So what was interesting is she had said, you know, oh, I have the perfect person for you. This is your soul sister. And I actually see you working really closely with her. And so she introduced us, and there I am, and I'm like laying on the bed going through the motions. But what was really interesting is I was with a friend, and on the way to this fair, I just all about what was going on in my world and what was happening inside of me and the shifts I was seeing and what was happening. And I get to the fair, I meet Lea, I'm laying on the table, and my friend is close by listening to this healing happening. And Lea starts doing her work, and she starts regurgitating everything I just told my friend about. And I was sitting there going, okay, this is wild. I like this girl. She's right on point. And that's how our relationship really connected. And when we can see those things that kind of come into an alignment, and when we can reference back, and I'll give you another example that I'm seeing now 10 years, a little bit of a loop around within my own development, is I went and seen a psychic 10 years ago. And he's like, you know what? Okay, let me recap. The 10 years ago, I was working at, a telecommunications company. I had a successful career. And so he goes, yeah, I see you like a traveling road show. You've got puppets, you've got music and movement, you're teaching this practice, but you're like traveling around to all these centers, and you're like this traveling road show. And I thought, what a waste of my money. This guy is a quack, right? And
little does he know the puppeteer has arrived.
Little does he know I am now playing with puppets, doing my music and movement, my breath work, all the mindful practices, and beginning to start the journey of traveling around. And I'm sitting here going, where's that tape? Where's that reading? Because back then it's cassette tapes, right? They would put in a little cassette tape and you would sit down. So I'm on this little journey to find that cassette tape. But what was interesting is I wasn't ready to hear that at that time. And moving through our life experiences, there's some things that we're just not ready to hear, or we come at it from a place of, oh, I know this. And instead of coming from a place of, oh, I know this, or he's a quack, just having that open mind, understanding then, if not now, maybe later, or having that open mind to recognize that everything that's happening, like you mentioned, around us is happening, for the greater purpose of our future, or there's a deeper meaning, and we don't necessarily understand what that deeper meaning is, but to be able to have that open mind and to move through each experience with that awareness instead of just shutting it down. But it was really, really cute reflection for me, because I thought, wow, to have that conversation with this gentleman again to say thank you. But an interesting piece too is I didn't let that advice rule how I led my life, right? Because there's a lot of times that we can get a piece of advice and just have that as like, this is what I'm doing, and it's that I'm in control of it, versus just letting it naturally unfold, which I think is a beautiful piece to take away, is bringing it in, having that awareness, but releasing that control of that piece.
It's that critical thought piece, right? Because it doesn't matter who you go to, any intuitive, any medical intuitive as well, or psychic or reader that you want to go to, they're reading the energy, but it's up to you as a human being to be an advocate for your own self, and don't take anybody's word as gospel. Your own word should be your gospel. Your own gut feeling should be the one that you listen to. They're either just reaffirming you or seed planting to help you find the best route that is for you. So anytime anybody goes and gives you a reading where you're like, well, that was total horse shit, it still sits there in the back of your brain either way. And then a couple of years later, it will unfold, and timing, sometimes it can be really off. And sometimes it's just the energy doesn't match, or the reader is not working to their highest ethical standard, or, there's so many different variations of reasons why something doesn't resonate in that moment. But being an advocate for yourself in that time. I love how we veered from that right into the spiritual. That was so beautiful. But how can you not when you're talking about Tina? All I remember is Tina and her old business partner, Tara, used to hold these spiritual retreats that were really, I mean, spiritual is the foundation, but they gutted you. Those retreats were like, here, let's rip you open and show all of the ways that you can heal yourself. And you're surrounded by these women and men sometimes too, that were just raw and vulnerable and so beautiful. And so the first time that we finally were able to like really connect on a personal level, Tina's like, Crystal's coming, I'm putting you in a room together, you're going to be together. And sure enough, we were also put in a room that grew up with my sister, where I was like, what is happening? And you walk in the room and it was like, oh, these angels started singing. And then we've been, you know, like best friends ever since. It was just,
and then we didn't sleep for 4 days.
We didn't sleep. There was no sleeping to be had. We just talk. That's all we do. Hence why we're doing Chatter That Matters, because we just sit and shoot the shit all of the time.
Thank you for that. No, I definitely remember our experiences together, and I actually asked for dates as I'm, you know, gathering up information for my accreditation, and I was looking back. I'm like, oh, 2012, 2014, 2016. That's the year I met Lea. Like I can remember when, you know, we first connected and we were able to share that experience in, you know, especially also in the same room, right? Where we didn't sleep. We didn't sleep. It was like we would have our workshop and then we'd come back. I'm like, this is great. And, you know, my connection with you, my connection with Auntie has been very pivotal in my development. And this is why I always come back and we have these conversations, because your experiences, my experiences, it's beautiful. You know, the other day I'm sitting there and I'm, you know, working out my workshop series and just sitting there and asking for clarity. And all of a sudden I get a text and it's you. You're like, hey, do you have a quick second? I'm like, okay. So then we, you know, I call and you have some questions for me. I'm like, you know what? Just super awesome that you wanted to chat, because I didn't realize I also needed you and I asked for clarity. And the universe was like, Lea. So it was a beautiful impromptu chat, but it's very, I would say, you know, admiring to connect and to share those, you know, questions, but also to mastermind around certain things, because I feel that we are in this shift. We are in this shift in our personal worlds and our business worlds, and to be able to come together to say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Or what are your thoughts on that? And as we connect with our energy, a lot more comes to us. And I just want to share my gratitude for that, because there's times when, you know, you could be sitting there banging your head against the wall and I'm like, why didn't I call sooner?
Yeah. Well, it's because sometimes we need to sit and bang our head against a wall. It's kind of a necessary situation. I just think that it's really cool, the synchronicity and going back into how people come into your life and leave your life. And you know that old saying, like the seasons, or what is that? What is that
I know what it is. They're here for a reason, a season or a lifetime.
And or if your friendships have lasted longer than 7 years, they'll probably last a lifetime. And I think that it's well, that's not true. Absolutely not true at all. I believe that as soon as you stand into empowerment of working, life is working for you, situations can work for you. And this is not in any way, shape, or form, I'm going to do a sidebar, to dismiss significant trauma as it was meant to happen to you. I think that's complete horseshit as well. Life is messy. But if trauma does happen to you, which we're all living in it with the pandemic on a lower scale, but if you go through significant trauma and you're struggling to come out the other side and struggling with treatment, creating the mindset of how can I use this to my advantage at this point to continue to heal, instead of using it to keep me limited in my pain. There is a big mindset difference, and that's what I work a lot of people through, and that's what you've helped me work through myself. Even, you know, even though we teach and preach and mentor people through these types of things, it's really important that we also have our own person to go to, or people, tribes, you know, your women collective or male collective, or even just, you know, not even gender gender neutral collective of people that you can go to help you get clear that you can be empowered in any choice that you make. And I think it's really neat, the collection of universal little life bombs. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely. And I felt that last night meeting with my client, and that little life bomb that just kind of dropped right in. And also the connection, right now we're connecting because they're First Nations. And I recently found out in the last few years that my dad has Blackfoot heritage through that. And so there's a little bit of a bloodline going through me as well. And I've always been drawn into the Indigenous culture. I trained in practitioner training. I'm not a shaman in any way, shape, or form. I love the medicine. I've always been drawn to the medicine of the earth and how it's starting to culminate. And we're going back to the roots of what this land actually was built upon, which was the medicine of the earth, the Indigenous peoples, and how the anti-racism is coming through. I'm totally going off on a tangent right now, but it was part of that conversation last night, and the coming home. Mm-hmm. Right? We're all learning how to come home. And with that is learning the synchronicity of your life. And if you are a believer of past lives, of parallel universes, of different timelines, of timelines merging, of, energy beyond the human eye and what you can see and feel, of aliens coming in, and do you know what I mean? Like, if you're a believer of all of the things that are fantastical and imaginative, and some people call woo-woo, and some people are like, no, that's a fact of life. When you take all of it, it is just a coming home. It's reminding you to come home and see all of the bullet points of, as I hit 41 this year. As I hit,
you had to 41. Think about that for a second. You're like, yes, 41.
As I go into my forever. 41st year of life, this synchronicity is happening more and more, where I'm seeing the way that the universe or creator or source or anything that consciousness was like, has literally been like this. And I'm sitting here and they're going, oh, bunk, okay, you'll meet them in 20 years. And oh, bunk, even two of my friends who I met at the beginning of my divorce, found out that she was probably in the nightclub, because she's about 10 years my senior, and she was married to a nightclub owner in Victoria, and her partner now used to be a bartender in that nightclub, and that nightclub my mom snuck me into when I was 18 years old with two of my friends. And I'm like, I wonder if you actually served me drinks, because I used to go to that nightclub, and now they're like two of my best friends. And it's just this, wow, how beautiful and exciting when you can look at the magic of life, Magic
in life, but you're also open to see that, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we have our blinders on, and if we don't have that awareness piece, you might have never connected those dots, but because you're open and willing to see it, I feel that, having that is such a gift, right? Mm-hmm. Because, we could be a victim of our own past, or we can be a victim of our story. And like you said, are you utilizing these experiences to help you grow, to help you crawl out of that and see the beauty in all of the lessons and learnings, right? So I love story. I love storytelling.
I know you too. It's just exciting when you can see the magic in it. I feel like I have a sunbeam coming down.
All of a sudden it's like,
I'm gonna just close that blind quickly.
Do it. I won't count this time because you're still on the screen.
1, 2, 3.
That's what was everyone's favorite part, was the counting and the running.
And
do you even remember what we talked about? I don't know, but I just remember. No, I'm just kidding.
I love it. Better. It's fun. Yeah, it is.
What else? What else do you want to talk about?
I'm not too sure. There's been a lot of energies coming in lately. There's a lot of fear. I've been talking a lot about the choice of living in fear or grace. Beautiful. And actively having to choose grace when you wake up. And anytime a thought comes in, to go, is this fear or grace? or, love or fear, but that hate and that a lot of the hatred coming out around the communities and the world, it is fear-based, right? People are terrified, and having that critical thought and actually encouraging critical thought and body autonomy as a human right, and not dismissing people and their fears.
Absolutely.
Not dismissing people and their hate, and actually being tolerant towards the intolerance, because if you are intolerant towards intolerance, then you're just as guilty, right? And really bringing that tolerance in and finding some grace within all of the fear that we are allowed to think differently. People claiming or calling people out for not being educated or claiming they're Google educated, all of that is just separation. All of it is fear-based, but it gaslights an entire population because the stories and the emotions behind how everybody's feeling are very valid, whether you agree with it or not. And so actively choosing to wake up every morning with, I'm going to attempt to meet every situation and thought and old pattern coming in to my being with grace and tolerance, and really challenging yourself on that tolerance and what that actually means without my opinion. We always say your opinion is the lowest form of intelligence. I actually think the opinion based off of emotion can be your highest form of intelligence, because we're lacking a lot of emotional intelligence wrapped up in compassion and kindness. Absolutely. And just because you don't agree with somebody doesn't mean that they're stupid.
Yeah.
Right? Just because you don't agree that one person, for example, vaccinations, which is a hot topic, just because you don't agree that vaccinations are the be all and end all, or you want to get one, or you're fearful of them, doesn't mean that you're an idiot. It means that you are using your critical thought to question and to take the best choice possible for you as a person. And it also doesn't mean that the people who are fully 100% pro-vaccination are idiots as well. This is what they are doing as their body autonomy, and their emotional intelligence is telling them that this is what they need. And so there is no wrong if you can meet it with grace. And I think that we're lacking a lot of that within our homes. It's not within society, because everything starts at home. It's within our home, right? That's sorry.
I was just going to say, checking yourself, right? Because whatever you're feeling or whatever you're thinking, you are creating this vibrational match for what to come to you. Yeah. So when we say, oh, I want you to change, or I want this to change, or whatever change, but when we can connect within ourselves, and this is what I've been really reflecting on lately, is that if I want things to change around me, I need to do the work for me inside as well. So am I feeding that fear inside of me, which then is creating fear from outside to affect me? Or am I focusing in on my thoughts, as you mentioned, creating that grace within inside of me? Instead of saying you to all the people around me, I'm going to say I, and make that shift from the inside out, so that I'm responding versus allowing external stimulants to, create this reaction of fear-based. So I love the living more within grace and kindness and acceptance, and also recognizing what are my thoughts and feelings on whatnot, and let's just fart it all out on paper.
Fart it.
Right? You say garbage dump, I'm going to fart it all there. Got to mention the toots, right? To just brain dump it out and get it out on paper and release that. Because once we can release that, feel better, journal, write, whatever, talk, have these types of conversations with no judgment, recognizing that feeling is somewhere from a belief system coming in, but we often will attract that in our world. So if we want to attract something different, then focusing in on that exact vibrational match that we are putting out.
Well, and that critical thought, that awareness goes with just witnessing. Absolutely. Observing yourself. Being in observation is being of service to your own self, right? Did we talk about this last time where I don't know, but it's Sherry? It was Sherry Morrow from Grace Coaching that was like, serve is in observe. And I was like, oh my God, right? So to be of service to yourself is to observe yourself, and to really observe without judgment as well. But how do you do that? first you just need to listen to the chatter. You got to listen
quiet.
to all of that stuff. One of my program clients in his last week's homework was sitting in silence to listen and try not to direct his thoughts. Try not to specifically meditate on something. Try not to analyze what he was thinking, just what's coming into your head without directing it. It's hard, but actually witnessing where you go, because when you can witness where you're going with all of the stuff that's happening, like I will immediately upon closing my eyes, I always think about the amount of people I have to get back to, the emails that I haven't responded to, and my to-do list for work this week, and then the grocery list, and then usually it's my to-do list with the kids.
Strategy. Yes.
That's what I'm thinking about at the moment I close my eyes, especially at nighttime. And so I've gotten used to challenging myself, going, okay, let me go through that first, because by trying to control my thoughts in the background, I'm not observing myself. I am micromanaging the way that I'm thinking. So now I'm just going to give myself 5 minutes to think about everything that I need to do. And I'm actually going to be like, okay, what do I have to do? This. And as soon as I've run through it in my head, well, what else can I think about? Oh, this is coming. Oh, shit. I didn't know that was sitting back there.
Put that in a little box and move on to the next one.
Well, damn, I didn't know that was bothering me. But when we're trying to shut it down and to micromanage what we're thinking and how we're feeling or not feeling, then we actually don't get anywhere, because we're dismissing ourselves in that moment.
And we're judging ourselves. So why am I thinking all this stuff? Right? Why am I thinking all these thoughts? And then the self-judgment takes over, and then you go down that rabbit hole, right? But what's interesting is when you close your eyes, take notice what gets loud, right? What gets loud.
I just had J-Lo in my head. Let's get loud. Let's get loud. Yeah, sorry. Anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It was just boom, J-Lo.
There's no interruption here. We had to have a shoulder shimmy. I was just waiting for it. I'll take it. But what's interesting is that, after time and time of sitting in silence, like you say, some days it's loud, some days it gets real quiet. Some days there's something that come up, we're going, well, wait a second, that is a great idea. Or, ooh, I didn't recognize that was eating me inside. So I love the silence piece. And, as being busy moms and, busy lives, it's very interesting. When I first started this practice, I think I would message you and be like, I'm hiding downstairs. Right? Your advice to me is like, you need a timeout, like a mama timeout. I don't care where you take it, go and find your spot. So it's like, okay, then go find a spot and be like, I'm like hiding in the closet. Just to have some peace and quiet. Yeah. But after practicing, I'm now at a place where I could be sitting there and having 8 children around me in the center, my own children during the day, and just take a moment and close my eyes and just have that moment. Even though it's loud around me, I can still center myself in, and it's such a beautiful little mini reset and a mummy timeout, whatever you want to call it, to take that time to start to listen to what's going on and also trust that voice inside of us, and I've had a few conversations with very analytical person that says, when I hear things in my mind, like that's stereotyped as being like schizophrenic, when reality is that is your own thoughts. And to think that hearing our own thoughts for the first time could be scary is very, I hold a lot of empathy and compassion, because not a lot of people can feel comfortable just listening to their own thoughts inside of their head with no judgment, right? It's great to be able to listen to that and to hear what's happening. Does that make you crazy? No, absolutely not. That means you're just connecting with yourself. So I wanted to mention that too, because that judgment piece is a big piece of, well, who am I? And I'm hearing things, and is that normal? And as we first, tap into that.
Well, I think that you have to listen with judgment to understand that you're judging yourself first. It always, absolutely. Whenever you're doing any form of meditation or critical thought or, that tolerance piece where we're waking up and choosing, first of all, we have to just, we have to find somebody to talk to about it, because it's important that we bounce ideas off. And if you're really interested in learning the baby steps of personal development or spiritual connection or whatever it is that you're wanting to do, mindfulness, conscious living, you have to start at the very, very, very tip, the very smallest step. And that is just going, I'm being a judging asshole right now. Boom, you just started the ball rolling. That is awesome. That was an observation. Don't try to control that observation. Don't try to like backtrack on you being a judgmental dick. Just keep it there and witness it for the next week without trying to change it or micromanage. We micromanage everything, right? So don't try to change it.
With grace.
Yes. So don't try to change it. Don't try to think that something's wrong with you. Like we talked about last week, when we go into these personal development holes, it's always proving that something is wrong with you. And when you can find acceptance going, I'm judging them, I'm accepting that I'm judging them, I am just going to sit with that, then you release all intolerance towards yourself and you can witness it more. And when you witness a behavior, you then have an opportunity to go, I love the way I handled that, or this needs improvement. Now I know that I don't like the way I'm feeling here. So now I can change something. You have to understand what you like and don't like about a thought or a feeling before you can change it. Like, for example, I was just listening to Mel Robbins. I love her books. And she always, this one specific one, she goes through coaching sessions and then she breaks it down and she's got these little nuggets of wisdom in there. And this one that I was listening to yesterday was, you know, when we set out a goal for ourselves, okay, I'm going to use myself. I'm 41 and I want to be exercising every day and I want a flat tummy for the summer. The reality is I don't want to exercise every day. So I'm either going to beat myself up, right? I'm kind of going to beat myself up and take myself into a shame spiral because I'm not exercising every day. Or I get to a point where I accept the fact that I just don't fucking want to. I don't want to. Therefore, why am I forcing myself? So I look at myself in the mirror. I look at my body and I'm going to love myself because I'm choosing to stay the way that I am instead of fitting a box where I think I should be over here. And this is just a very basic example, right? So I teach meditation and mindfulness. I don't meditate every day. I don't want to. There are some times where I'm meditating every day for 6 months. And there's other times where I'm like, nope, I'm going to choose this form of meditative practice and this form of conscious living, blah, 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 blah. And I don't do things I don't want to do. And that's an observation.
It's like a seasonal vitamin taker. Take it when you need it. Like, oh, wait a second, it's seasonal vitamin time now. But what's interesting about it is you're going to do the things that you like to do because our brain, right? We'll go Marissa Peer here, right? Right? That was a year ago, by the way. I was reflecting upon that. It was a year ago, wasn't it? It really was. And reflecting upon our brains and our bodies, our brains, whatever energy we're putting out, we want to do things that are, comfortable for us. Mm-hmm. Right. So if, say, for instance, you're going to do something and it's going to cause you sweat and pain or whatever, you're not going to want to do that because innately you want to do what's going to keep you safe and comforting. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to see as you're sharing, and we talk about, make the unfamiliar familiar and breaking through those beliefs and, that persistent continuous action. But at the end of the day, sometimes you don't want to do it. So honor that inside. Right.
Well, and it is about honoring how much of a priority is having flat abs for me. It's not. It is not like, and this is just a stupid, like small example where it might be really big and it might be a priority for you. And that is perfectly okay. That's your priority. For me, I don't think of it as a priority. And I was forcing myself to have it as I'm 41 and I'm actually quite, for the first time in my life, learning to be comfortable with the curves that I do have.
I love your body.
Thank you. I am starting to love my body too. And it's not a 20-year-old body. It is
And lately when you've been dancing online, I'm like, yeah, girl. Yeah, girl.
Thank you. Thank you. But we can relate that to anything. So when you're in observation about judgment, when you're in the tolerance, when you're observing your life in the synchronicities, I love how we're tying this all up right now. when you go into observation and you're looking for the magic, you look at what priority you want to put on your life. So to learn, it takes 3 weeks to form a habit. It takes up 3 to 9 months to create a lifestyle change. So if you really want to make that situation where you're meditating or you're observing or you want to change the way that you think, you have to decide, is this going to be a priority for me? That is your first choice. Do I want to learn how to be more tolerant? First, I have to make that a priority for myself and decide, is this how I want to live? Is it important to me? And that's when you start to find, what's good. I love yoga. I used to do it 5 to 7 days a week. Like, it was nonstop. It fed me. My body craved it. It was my priority for my health. I got pregnant, could no longer do downward dog without hurling. And my yoga practice is now ebbs and flows with what's happening with me, right? But I stepped into that grace of, I listened to what was a priority at that time. Now it's not a priority for me every single day. What is important to me? How do I want to input that into my life? Integrate. Thank you. You and the words.
I'm your dictionary. I'm right there. There's a piece of me in your brain.
As soon as I'm like,
2 syllables, I'm like,
where'd it go? Where'd it go?
I got you.
Integrate. So I love that. I mean, taking all of the pieces of what we've talked about, taking the seed planting from your psychic reading and going, oh, I remember that observation, taking the synchronicity of how people come in and out of your life and how it's working for you, taking trauma and how you can use it to benefit you moving forward, because what else are you going to do?
Absolutely.
Right? What other option do you have other than to learn to work with it and work with you, because it's already happened. So let's do something with it to better our lives. All of that comes down into observation, being of service to yourself.
And reshaping your story, right? Rewriting that story. Like hearing about all the things that you're posting and it's coming out, it's just like ready to just,
oh my God, I have so much excited. I'm so excited. I have no idea how I'm going to implement it yet, but I've been working really hard on all of this stuff. And the biggest piece actually that I'm going to be like shoving out there is the piece on trauma and conversion disorder and connecting into the body and how to learn about that. So taking what happened to me, the trauma that led into the mental illness that led me into my career, right? And has led me now into, different facets. And now I have this incredible girl that I'm working with that I'm just so proud of. And what can we do with all of this? How can we show
beautiful
people?
Case study. Beautiful
it is.
Case study.
Yeah.
A month and a half. I'm like, oh.
She's just killed it. She's killing it because she's dedicated. And this is, I attribute it to the fact that she's got this brilliant 14-year-old mind, but it's also because she's dedicated.
Absolutely.
She made the choice. She doesn't want to live a certain way anymore. And that's how we can all do that. It's just a choice, right?
I love it.
And working with what you do have.
Working with what you do have. Chatter that matters.
I think that was almost an hour, wasn't it?
I think so. I haven't been timing it. Just time goes like this and it's like, oh, right. Okay.
What have we done? Oh, so many subjects today. Anyways, we've already wrapped it all up. I think we're done for the day.
I think we are too.
Okay,
then there's the after party. Love you too.
Bye everybody. Thanks for listening.
We'll continue this later. Yeah.